Matt. Thank you very much for the invitation. So I would like to give you an introduction to our company, CO2 Bioclean. Actually, our mission is to convert the CO2 emissions into biopolymers. So what we do is we take CO2 emissions from industrial installation and we ferment them into biopolymers like polyhydroxyl canoids, which are biodegradable polyesters. And they're very well suited to produce different items, for example, textile fibers and packaging that substitute petrochemical polymers. This is quite a revolutionary process because it's a different way of making biopolymers, and it's a different way of making items made of plastics. And very important that these biopolymers are compostable and biodegradable, which means they return to soil as organic carbon after their end of life. So actually, with our technology, we address two main issues. The climate change on one end, because we address CO2. Basically, we use CO2 that otherwise would be emitted into the atmosphere. And we address also plastic pollution, because there is a huge amount of plastics that are disposed, but not all properly disposed. So about 8 million tons per plastics every year are not appropriately disposed. So in the end, they end up landfill or they end up in the marine environment, which is a large amount if you think about the environmental impact of the plastic themselves. So what we do is we have a technology that converts the CO2 emissions that are captured into polyhydroxyl canoids. And out of these materials, we make the full formulation for several end uses. One of them is textiles, so fibers. Another one is packaging, and another one is interior design. For example, here are some examples. For example, the example of packaging, in which we have been collaborating with Procter & Gamble, and in which actually our biopolymers provide a sustainable feedstock and a sustainable raw material for producing packaging with various characteristics to be adapted to the specific end user. Then there is an example of fibers. This is the project that's been actually funded by the European Commission through the EC accelerator funding. So basically, in this case, the fibers have the advantage of a release of microplastics with a very short lifetime. So no release of long-term microplastics in the environment through the washing cycles. And of course, the fact that the fibers are sourced sustainably. Another example is durable goods, for example, chairs that can be made out of our materials, and we have demonstrated them with our partner Sabio Materials. And other interior design items, as this basket that you can see that has excellent aesthetics, not very common for biopolymers. So what we do is we combine our know-how in patented fermentation technology with the know-how and end-use formulation and compounding. And this is really our uniqueness, that we combine innovative building blocks with a formulation know-how and proven compounding capabilities. We addressed a very large market because the plastic industry is huge, is over 350 million tons per year, approaching 370 million. And basically, our polymers could potentially replace about 1/3 of the entire plastic market. So the entire market is really huge. Of course, as a small company, we need to grow before capturing a large size, but just to say the potential of the market is there. So what we want to do is licensing models, so licensing the technology to CO2 emitters, and also license the formulation and the compounding know-how to the user of the biopolymers themselves. In our team are the founders, so myself, I'm taking the role of CEO, so responsible of the strategy of the company, and Alessandro Carfagnini, who's a co-founder and CTO. We have an international team with competences both on the management side and also on the technical side. So why is important for you investors to invest in us? Because first of all,
time is up. I'm sorry to cut you off, Fabiana. I'm going to bring in Pippa and William as well. William's with SOSV. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself after this, after your pitch, since I know you're a little time constrained. But thank you for sharing what you're doing with CO2 Bioclean. I'm going to hand things over first now to Pippa for questions, and then we'll put William on the clock after that and see if he's got any good questions based off of what he's seen.
Hi, Fabiana. Thanks for your presentation. Looks like a really exciting technology. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it actually works? I appreciate you might not want to share everything, but what sort of mechanism are you using to convert the CO2 to the biopolymer?
So that's actually a fermentation technology combined with some chemical steps for the purification of the polymer. So it's a combination of biological and chemical technologies, basically.
Right. And so sometimes with that kind of fermentation technology, the efficiency or the kind of the rate of the reaction can be an issue. So can you talk to us a little bit more about how confident you are that you'll be able to produce rapidly enough to use a significant amount of carbon dioxide and produce a meaningful amount of plastic?
Yes, actually the work that we have been doing so far is, and the core of our patent is also on how to improve the efficiency of the fermentation. So it's something that unfortunately I can't disclose because it's still confidential, it's still not public. And but this is the core of our work, to make the fermentation more efficient and to scale up the technology.
Great.
And it's actually the work that we are doing with the EC accelerator of the European Commission.
Okay, great. So I also just interested, we've looked at a lot of this kind of technology that are doing something useful with carbon dioxide, and I definitely think it will be kind of part of the world going forward, but we've so far not invested in any, just because we're so worried about the kind of the moral hazard of enabling people who are producing carbon dioxide to continue to do so, and in fact to do it more profitably. So I'm sure this is something you've thought about as well. So can you put my mind at rest there as like how you're going to make sure that's not a kind of unintended side effect of what you're doing?
Of course, I mean, the carbon dioxide production can be reduced, but to a certain point, the chemical process will always produce carbon dioxide. I mean, there is no way out. I mean, CO2 is a side product of many chemical reactions, and even if this was the only source of CO2, this would be enough to replace the entire plastic production as it is today. And to be frank, we can't replace with one single product the entire plastic market. So it would be enough to saturate the entire accessible market potential that we can possibly access. So just to say, it would be still huge for us just to access the CO2, that it's I mean, a natural side product of several chemical processes. We don't see that this is going to be changed, because there are many materials that will still be produced, and there is no alternative at the moment. I mean, chemically speaking, there will be still no alternative in the future.
Right, thank you. I'll hand over to William now. Hi.
Yeah, sorry, I joined halfway through. Apologize. Do you have can you just tell us how much it would take to get to a minimum viable scale? How much money, how much investment would it take to get to a minimum viable sort of scale implementation? So how much capital would it take to set this up and get it running?
So actually, what we got at the moment, we've got 6.6 million committed by the European Commission and European Investment Bank. And at the moment, we are raising another 4.4 million. And this is what we need. So basically, it's 11 million in total.
Okay, 11 million to get the first wave set up, correct?
Yes, I mean, to get this and actually beyond that, but it to be commercially active, that's what the entire amount that we need.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure.
So one question I have, Fabiana, it almost feels like there's two separate focuses here, and one is more on the carbon capture side, and one is on what you do with the carbon side of things. How do you feel about focus with what you're doing? It seems like there's a lot of different possibilities of different materials you can make, different plastics. You also mentioned fabrics and textiles. How do you focus or choose where to put your energy?
Actually, we have three main. We want to keep some differentiation because this is important also for the perspective of a licensing business. We focus on three main areas that are the ones that I described: textiles, packaging, and interior design. But of course, there are many more that we are completely not considering at the moment. For example, can be cosmetics, can be also paints and coatings. So we are not considering all these areas at the moment. There are also many more articles that you can make out of plastics. So we are narrowing down our focus to three. And also with the packaging, we are quite specific on the type of packaging that we are developing. But of course, it's much larger than that. To restrict more further down, it's something that we don't want to do, because then otherwise the focus is too narrow, and considering that there are large amounts of CO2, then the market is too narrow with respect to the need of the market for actually converting the CO2 itself.
Mm-hmm. What do you see outside of funding as the biggest risk for the company?
For the company, actually, the biggest risk is really to get the speed and to be ready before standard technology will be established for the CO2 conversion. So I think the key is to get enough speed to be there at the right time.
And in terms of timing, who do you view as your largest competitors in this space? Why will you be successful?
Actually, if we look at our competitors, the real competitors are the competitors on the CO2. I mean, for the biopolymers, there is space for everyone because the biopolymer market is still small. So one more actually helps the market. The real competition is whether a solution for the CO2 conversion will establish itself as a state-of-the-art solution, and there will be no room for anybody else, at least in large CO2 emissions, so CO2 emissions from large plants. And of course, this is a risk. For example, the CO2 to methanol is increasingly important, although methanol is a completely different material than chemical than our polymers. So, but of course, this is I would say we're not competing with methanol, because it would make no sense. But if the solution, for example, CO2 to methanol becomes the most accepted solution by the industry, this is a drawback for us, because our solution will be an exotic solution and not be accepted by the large players, for example.